Keeping the flames. Thousands evacuated in California as dozens of fires burn across the state tonight. An emergency declared. Firepower on night 3 of the Democratic National Convention. Vice presidential nominee Kamala Harris taking center virtual stage. Former President Obama and Hillary Clinton both expected to speak tonight as President Trump goes on the attack. What to expect? Teachers pushing back. The battle over reopening America's schools. New York City teachers threatening to sue if they feel schools are not safe, as the WHO warns that young people are becoming primary spreaders of COVID-19. Trials amid tribulation. While Russia claims they have a vaccine, how far behind is the U.S.? The steps for approval in our Vaccine Watch. Newly released audio of one of the former officers charged in the killing of George Floyd, claiming he wanted to roll Floyd onto his side, while he says Derek Chauvin told them to keep holding him down. Drowning in debt, we're taking a deep dive into the student loan crisis. Younger generations unable to get ahead, while some are rethinking higher education altogether. And flower power, how all you brown thumbs out there can grow some life and color in your spaces. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We are now in the home stretch. The third night of the Democratic National Convention is about to begin shortly. Last night, the party officially nominated Joe Biden to take on President Trump. And tonight, his historic vice presidential pick, Senator Kamala Harris, set to address the nation and make the case for the Biden-Harris ticket. And she is coming with lots of backup, locked and loaded with Nancy Pelosi, Elizabeth Warren, Hillary Clinton, and former President Obama, all part of the night's lineup. And Mary Bruce leads us off.
Just hours from now, former President Barack Obama, speaking from Philadelphia, the birthplace of American democracy, will argue that very democracy is on the line in this election. Obama expected to attack his successor in searing, unprecedented terms. Excerpts of his speech charge President Trump has never taken the job seriously. Quote, he's shown no interest in putting in the work, no interest in finding common ground, no interest in using the awesome power of his office to help anyone but himself and his friends, no interest in treating the presidency as anything but one more reality show. Obama will say the, quote, consequences of that failure are severe. 170,000 Americans dead, millions of jobs gone, our worst impulses unleashed, our proud reputation around the world badly diminished, and our democratic institutions threatened like never before. And soon after Obama speaks, Kamala Harris will become the first black woman and the first Asian American nominated to be vice president. Democrats tonight eager to showcase this moment in history.
When she says for the people, it is in every ounce of who she is.
Also tonight, a bittersweet return for Hillary Clinton, who accepted the Democratic presidential nomination at the last convention. In excerpts of her speech, she delivers a warning. For 4 years, people have said to me, I didn't realize how dangerous he was. I wish I could go back and do it over. Or worst, I should have voted. Well, this can't be another woulda, coulda, shoulda election. Most of all, no matter what, vote.
Hillary Clinton trying to encourage people to get out to the polls. Mary Bruce joins us now from Wilmington, Delaware, where Kamala Harris will give her speech later on tonight. And some strong words from President Obama against President Trump. It'll also make the case tonight for Joe Biden. What's he planning to say?
Lindsay, he will describe Joe Biden as a brother who made him a better president. He not only will, of course, make a forceful case against President Trump, but he will argue why Joe Biden is the best leader to take the country forward. The former president will make a direct plea to voters. He will say, according to the excerpts, quote, tonight, I'm asking you to believe in Joe and Kamala's ability to lead this country out of dark times and build it back better.
Tonight's lineup will certainly be filled with lots of female speakers. What's the Biden campaign saying about what they're hoping to showcase tonight? And will we also start hearing more specifics on their agenda?
This is a night to highlight some trailblazing women, right? In addition to Kamala Harris, we will be hearing from Hillary Clinton and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. But this is also a chance for the Biden campaign to hit on some of the pivotal issues in this election. You'll be hearing about climate change, gun reforms, health care, a lot of issues that are top of mind for so many voters. It is a chance for this campaign to highlight Joe Biden's record, his experience, to continue to argue why they think the current president is failing in these areas, and to to present again that united front from the Democratic Party, that broad coalition that they've been trying to present in the previous nights, and why they feel that Joe Biden and his agenda is a way to turn the page in this country. Lindsay.
Mary Bruce, and we will be checking back in with you later tonight. Thanks, Mary. He was part of the DNC's first all-virtual roll call last night.
I proudly cast South Carolina's 64 votes as follows: 15 for Bernie Sanders and 49 for our next president of the United States, Joe Biden.
And he's also trying to unseat longtime Republican Senator and Trump ally Lindsey Graham in South Carolina. Lately, polls have shown it is a tight race in this deep red state. Joining us now, Jamie Harrison. Thanks so much for your time, Jamie.
Thanks so much for having me.
So first off, let's look ahead to night 3 of the DNC convention. What does it mean to you to see the first black woman accept a major party's nomination for VP tonight? And also, how important was it for Joe Biden to pick a black woman running mate?
Well, you know, I'm so proud of Kamala Harris. She's a friend, and she's a strong, smart, very powerful African-American woman. And it means so much to me personally, but it also means a lot to our community, particularly here in South Carolina. You know, when she was running for president, there were a lot of folks here that were really pushing and pulling for her. And, you know, it's just a tremendous thing. And I think a lot of folks are very appreciative of the vice president for selecting her as his nominee and running mate.
A Democratic presidential ticket has not won in South Carolina since Jimmy Carter. The seat that you're running for has been in Republican hands for nearly 60 years, and you're facing an incumbent with deep ties both in Washington and also South Carolina. How do you personally convince voters who have supported Lindsey Graham for years now's the time to change course?
You know, one of the first old adages that I learned in politics was the one uttered by Tip O'Neill, which is all politics are local. And listen, in the end of the day, it's about making sure that you as a representative, as a public servant, are actually serving the public, that you are addressing the issues that people care about on a day-to-day basis. And Lindsey Graham has been a missing in action senator. This is a guy who hasn't done an in-person town hall in almost 3 years. But you can find him on Sean Hannity on Fox News every other night at 9 o'clock. And so the people here in South Carolina are understand that. They see it and they feel it. We have a senator who, we're in a state where we have almost 700,000 people who have filed for unemployment. And it was our senator who held up the CARES Act initially and then said, over our dead bodies will we allow an extension of the federal benefit, a $600 benefit to those who are unemployed. That was bringing $120 million into the South Carolina economy every week. And right now, we're on the verge of schools opening back up. Parents wondering how they're going to get school supplies and things for their kids, still wondering how they're going to pay the rent or the mortgage. Our senator is now on vacation instead of going and doing the things that are needed in order to address the needs of the people here in South Carolina. And that's why I am in this race. That is why this race is so close, because people are fed up with the politics, the Washington, D.C. political games that Lindsey's playing, and they're ready for somebody that's going to roll up their sleeves and focus on them.
I'm told that on your desk you keep a quote from Ben Pitchfork Tillman, a former South Carolina governor who led a white gang that murdered 6 innocent African Americans. In 1876, Tillman said on the state's effort to disenfranchise voters, "We have scratched our heads to find out how we could eliminate the last one of them. We stuffed ballot boxes. We shot them. We are not ashamed." All these years later, are you confident that there won't be a number of hurdles for South Carolina voters trying to cast their ballots this fall? And what's your campaign doing to try to boost engagement and turnout among black voters?
Well, you know, it's really, really important. And, you know, going into this campaign, it was important for me to understand the history of the seat that I was vying for. And I understand the history of South Carolina, a state that I love so dearly. And so we are going eyes wide open. We are being proactive to make sure that every person in this state that is duly eligible to vote gets an opportunity to do so, even if they're not voting for me, because I believe fundamentally that the greatest right that we have as American citizens is our right to vote. And nobody should stand in the way of anybody exercising that right. I don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican. Nobody has that power. And so we're working with our Fair Fight, and we're working with our state party, the DNC, and other entities to make sure that we have attorneys on the ground in every county in South Carolina to protect the right to vote for all folks. As I've said from the start of this campaign, this is about closing a chapter on the Old South and starting a whole brand new book called A New South, a new South that is bold, that is inclusive and diverse, and where everybody has a role to play and everybody has value.
Last month, you penned an op-ed on BET.com with 2 other black Senate candidates, and in it you said representation matters, and for its entire history, the U.S. Senate has failed to represent the racial diversity of our nation. Out of the roughly 2,000 men and women who've served in the Senate, only 10 have been black. Considering this country's racial reckoning, are you of the belief that that'll change soon?
I do, because we're going to win this race. And won't it be ironic that South Carolina, the first state that actually succeeded from the Union in the Civil War, and in a seat that was occupied by John C. Calhoun, a seat occupied by Ben Tillman, and a seat occupied by Strom Thurmond, you're going to get an African-American senator, and South Carolina will become the very first state with 2 African-American senators serving at the very same time, 1 Democrat and 1 Republican.
You've described South Carolina Representative Jim Clyburn as your political father, and many would say that Clyburn's endorsement single-handedly saved Joe Biden's campaign back in February. What's the most important piece of advice that he's given you, and how will you prepare? How will you use that to prepare to serve if you get elected?
Well, Congressman Clyburn and Dr. Emily Clyburn, his late wife, and I was so honored to mention her last night when I gave the presentation, because they've been tremendous forces in my life. One of the things he told me when I was a staffer in his office, he said, Jamie, on the Hill, in Capitol Hill, there are members of Congress that are show horses and they're workhorses. He said, you always want to be a workhorse. And that's my aim. I'm going to roll up my sleeves, and I'm going to go to Washington, D.C. and work my behind off for the people of South Carolina, because they deserve it. They need somebody that's going to focus and fight for them.
Jamie Harrison, we appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
And next to news tonight over the battle at the post office after the Postmaster General said that he would suspend cost-cutting measures until after the election. Speaker Nancy Pelosi says that's not enough, insisting that he agree to reverse the cuts that they've already made, as Americans across the country say they've noticed a change. Here's ABC's Jonathan Karl.
ABC News has obtained photographs of what appear to be dismantled sorting machines at a postal facility in Portland. The postal worker who took the photos says the machines were dismantled over the past month. Across the country, similar images at a postal facility in Gaithersburg, Maryland, from ABC affiliate WJLA. The Postmaster General has agreed to pause cost-cutting measures Democrats call an attempt to sabotage the upcoming election by slowing down the delivery of mail-in ballots.
I don't frankly trust the Postmaster General and what he said.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the pause is not enough and, quote, does not reverse the damage already wreaked. She says she spoke with the Postmaster General and Trump mega donor Louis DeJoy, and he frankly admitted that he had no intention of replacing the sorting machines, blue boxes, and other mail infrastructure that have been removed. Coast to coast, there have been reports of delays in the mail. From a postal worker union representative in San Francisco.
I'm hearing from our members that mail are being left unworked, sitting on the workroom floors.
To Laura Goldberg in Miami, who says she's seen a clear change at her mailbox.
I put mail out into my mailbox Tuesday night, and I put my flag up, expecting that my bills would be picked up Wednesday. And I came out Wednesday afternoon, and my mail still hadn't been picked up.
President Trump insists he isn't doing anything to slow down the mail, and has even released video of himself filling out his own absentee ballot.
You have to make sure everything's...
President Trump has long said that he relies on mail-in voting, along with many members of his family, members of his cabinet. Jonathan Karl joins us now. Congress is also still stalled on more funding for the post office as part of those stimulus negotiations. What's the latest there?
Well, Nancy Pelosi has brought back the House. They plan a vote on Saturday on a bill that would provide $25 billion in additional funding to the post office, and also would instruct the Postal Service to undo the changes that were put in place, those cost-cutting changes that were put in place by the Postmaster General.
And what's the other news that the president made during his afternoon press conference?
Oh, wow, this is something else. He was asked about QAnon, you know, that far-right conspiracy theory that alleges essentially that President Trump's enemies, his opponents, include this cabal of Satan-worshiping pedophiles and cannibals, including top officials in the United States government and in governments around the world. The president was asked about that, and he said, quote, he said he didn't know much about it, but that, quote, I understand they like me very much, which I appreciate. He also said these are people who love our country. Now, Lindsay, another fact about QAnon is that the FBI not long ago put out a bulletin warning that this group poses a potential domestic terror threat. So that's the group that the president just said these are people who love our country.
Interesting development there. Jonathan Karl, thanks so much. And now to breaking news in the West. A state of emergency declared in California as dozens of wildfires there burn. Lightning strikes triggering scenes like this, driving through the flames near the biggest cluster of fires in the Bay Area. Our Clayton Sandell has the very latest.
Tonight, parts of the Golden State, now a fiery explosion of red, orange, and black. Thousands ordered to evacuate in darkness.
Don't stop.
Families racing to escape flames pushed by heat and wind.
Up and down the street, there's quite a few homes and structures that are burning right now.
Near Vacaville, a city of 100,000 northeast of San Francisco, multiple fires are tearing through communities. More than 46,000 acres scorched. The traffic on fire radios painting a grim picture of injuries and a losing battle.
3 ambulance for burn injuries, 2 victims en route.
These wildfires are moving incredibly fast, turning this entire mobile home park into an apocalyptic wasteland. Many got out with just seconds to spare.
It was like the entire wall of the forest was just coming at us down the road. It was so scary.
How much time did you have when?
30 seconds. I looked up and the back of my house was on fire.
Judy Vollmer and Marcia Ritz have been neighbors for 13 years.
I know.
Both their homes are gone.
I lost my cats and everything. I have no insurance. I have lost everything.
Now, Vollmer's most valuable possession is a very special flower pot pulled from the ashes.
The grandbabies made this for me. That's their handprints.
The dozens of fires here are grouped into what firefighters call complexes. There are now 4 burning across the state, supercharged by the weather.
Over the past 72 hours, California has experienced a historic lightning siege.
And climate change. Stanford researchers say the number of extreme fire weather days in California has doubled. With so many growing blazes, planes, choppers, and firefighters are stretched thin.
We have no more to give on the front lines.
And Lindsay, we have just learned of a firefighting tragedy here in California. We understand that a private helicopter that was contracted to fight a blaze near Fresno has crashed. And when it went down, it sparked a new brush fire, a 50-acre brush fire. Authorities tell us, however, that that is not a threat to any homes or structures. We also understand that the pilot, the only person on board, did not survive. Now, the other big problem here, you can see behind me, it's all this smoke in the air. It is very thick. There are fires burning in 8 of the 9 Bay Area counties here, and that is a huge problem for people with respiratory health problems, especially in the age of COVID-19. Lindsay?
Our thanks to you, Clayton. And now to the COVID crisis and the battles over school reopenings. Cases now spreading on college campuses. Scenes like this, a packed party at the University of Connecticut causing an uproar, and the school is now taking drastic action as more colleges reverse course on in-person classes and go virtual. Here in New York City, teachers in the nation's largest school system are threatening to strike if their schools are not safe. ABC's Stephanie Ramos has this report.
The new warning tonight that young people are rapidly spreading COVID-19. School officials investigating scene after scene of large college parties posted to social media. Authorities saying this has to stop. The University of Connecticut tonight taking drastic action after seeing this video of a packed party inside a dorm room. The school now kicking those students off campus.
I'm really glad that they're putting their foot down and enforcing these rules.
Nationwide, at least 22 states reporting cases on college campuses. More than 220 students testing positive at the University of Notre Dame, a 20% jump in cases. The school joining a growing list of universities switching to remote learning.
There was a certain fraction of the students that thought they were kind of invincible, I think.
Late today, the president weighing in on how schools can reopen safely.
Students who feel sick should not attend class and should limit social interaction. Then universities should implement measures to protect the high-risk students or professors and teachers.
And it's not just universities.
And there have been some studies to show that children from 10 to 19 can transmit to adults as easily as adults transmit to adults.
Teachers in New York City know one sick child can empty a classroom.
This city went through hell and came back, and we are not going back to hell because of short-sighted political agendas.
The teachers union threatening legal action and even a strike, saying it's not safe to reopen. They're demanding all schools must have PPE, proper ventilation, and a massive testing and tracing program before students return to class. And in Florida, an emotional day in court.
No, I'm not gonna choose. I mean, I've chosen my kids, my students over so many difficult things, but I can't put my family at risk.
The state's largest teachers union suing to stop in-person learning.
Just such a tough situation for so many. And Stephanie Ramos joins us now. Stephanie, what can you tell us about the other big headline today about blood plasma treatment?
Lindsay, top federal doctors, including Dr. Fauci, say they don't have enough data from clinical trials that proves plasma can help people fight the virus. Now, plasma has been beneficial to some, but more clinical trials are required before the FDA authorizes its use. Lindsay.
Stephanie Ramos, thanks so much. And now to a hate crime investigation in Hollywood, California. Police are now reviewing video which appears to show 3 transgender women being robbed and assaulted as bystanders simply laugh and mock instead of trying to help. A warning, this video is disturbing. ABC's Matt Gutman has more.
Tonight, the LAPD says it's closing in on the suspect in this vicious apparent hate crime. This video, a 26-minute chronicle of harassment of 3 transgender women right on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. The incident and that mockery,
I think that's a dude,
igniting a firestorm on social media. Eden Estrada, Jaslene Bissonette, and Jocelyn Allen say the man had been hassling them earlier. Then he stole Estrada's phone.
Initially, we all chased after him to retrieve my phone, but bystanders around us started to make fun of us and surrounded us and started throwing rocks, lighters, started calling us men.
Police say the suspect, armed with a metal bar, robbed Allen and later struck Bissonette in the head with a bottle. Damn! According to the most recent FBI data released, hate crimes directed at transgender individuals increased 42% in 1 year.
Because we're trans, nobody cared.
For more now, let's bring in Matt Gutman. Matt, where does the investigation stand, and are hate crime charges being considered?
They are. The LAPD is saying that it's going to investigate it as a robbery, but also as a hate crime. And with the help of a tremendous amount of social media sleuthing on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, they believe that they've identified the suspect. Detectives say that they're narrowing in the focus on him. He's not yet in custody, but that could happen at some point in the near future, Lindsay.
Matt Gutman, thanks so much for your reporting as always. And when we come back, the scene that no one ever wants to see outside their window. Look at that. And remember this moment when a billionaire wiped away the graduation class's debt? Tonight, we follow up how that moment changed their lives while so many others are crushed with unmanageable student loan debt. Plus, the audio revealing what one officer says he tried to do to George Floyd while he was handcuffed and how another officer, now charged with murder, responded. Well, this is something you certainly don't want to see outside of your window. Take a look at this massive water spout near the town of Aventura, just outside of Miami. Fortunately, no major damage was reported. This storm comes as people in that part of the country are beginning to keep an eye on the tropics. One storm particularly has a 90% chance of developing and could be near Florida next week. And now to the George Floyd murder investigation and a newly released audio recording. What former Minneapolis police officer Thomas Lane told investigators about those moments when Floyd begged for his life. ABC's Alex Perez has the latest.
Tonight, we're hearing from one of the former cops charged in the killing of George Floyd in his own words.
It's Thomas Lane, is that correct? Yes, sir.
Thomas Lane was one of the first officers on the scene, the court releasing Lane's 90-minute audio interview with investigators. The rookie cop says the officers thought Floyd was on drugs and says the more veteran officer, Derek Chauvin, who had his knee on Floyd's neck, directed how Floyd was restrained.
I think I had said again, I think we should roll him onto his side. And I believe Chauvin said, we have him, there's an ambulance coming, we got him, we're just going to hold here.
Floyd at least 24 times begged for air and said he couldn't breathe before losing consciousness.
It seems like your gut reaction was something's not right here and we need to rethink how we are restraining Mr. Floyd.
Yeah, I would say I felt like it maybe could have been handled differently, or we should be reassessing what we're doing.
Investigators also asked Lane why he drew his gun on Floyd just moments after encountering him.
Because I asked him to see his other hand, and he kept his hand like this. He had his one hand up, and then he kept his hand down here, and I said, let me see your other hand. Let me see your hand, and he didn't, so I don't know if he's got a gun.
That officer trying to explain his actions. For more now, let's bring in Alex Perez. And that former officer, Thomas Lane, he has argued that he actually didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, Lindsay, his attorney said those exact words in a 21-page filing in court, a motion to dismiss those charges. He's trying to shift any responsibility for what happened to former officer Derek Chauvin. It's a strategy that the other officers that have been charged are using as well. The next court hearing where that motion to dismiss will be heard is coming up on September 11th. Lindsay?
Alex Perez, thanks so much for your reporting. And we still have lots more to get to here on Prime. The body cam, which shows the NBA team president being shoved by a guard moments after his team won the NBA Finals. The guard originally claimed he was punched, what the NBA executive is saying tonight. And with news of Russia creating the very first COVID vaccine, what would it take for the trials here in the United States to make it over the finish line? And between college students deferring, schools opening, then shutting back down, all of this is creating economic chaos in higher education. We'll take a look by the numbers. But first, our post of the day. The teachers trying to have some fun despite the surreal school year.
I'm number one in your top 10. Miss Williams, been popping. 2020 new school year dropping. No COVID-19, ain't worried about a thing when economy ain't no stopping. I can teach your class with swag, this drip hard. Go ahead, take a picture on your iPhone. 2020 school year, yeah, virtual. And you know Miss Williams go viral. Talk to school, I'm a fool with the lesson. Come along with me, I swear it's a blessing. Classes in session, and we just progressing. Success is the topic and passes the message. Woo! My school is the best. There's no
Welcome back, everybody. We turn now to higher education. Later on in the show, we're going to take a look at the student loan crisis. But now we examine by the numbers how the pandemic is driving more students to defer or rethink their college plans and what this means for hard-hit schools now on the brink. 22% of college students are now planning not to enroll this fall, according to Axios. Incoming freshmen are even more likely to defer or change course. 40% who are hoping to begin a four-year residential college this fall say they'll likely delay or cancel those plans, according to Simpson Scarborough. Harvard University, which will be all virtual for undergrads this fall, announced that more than 20% of its would-be freshmen have now deferred. At this point, 33% of colleges are planning to reopen mostly or or fully online. 23% plan to reopen in person. 15% will likely take a hybrid approach, and 24%, like all of us, they're still figuring it out. That's according to the College Crisis Initiative at Davidson College. Like their students, many schools are struggling. American colleges and universities are projected to lose more than $120 billion from lost revenues and added expenses related to the coronavirus. That's according to the American Council on Education, and some may not survive. Still ahead here on Prime, our comprehensive look at how student loan debt has altered so many lives. What happened to the students who had millions of debt wiped clear by a billionaire? And the question, is a degree worth what it used to be? And it's the first company valued at $2 trillion. Can you guess which one? But first, here are some of the trending stories on abcnews.com.
The Democratic convention is at its midpoint, and with Joe Biden officially nominated,
thank you very, very much from the bottom of my heart.
Some political heavyweights will be highlighted tonight. Senator Elizabeth Warren and Hillary Clinton will speak. Kamala Harris will make history, becoming the first black woman to accept a major party's nomination for vice president. And former President Barack Obama will also take center stage.
Joe, I'm so proud to stand with you. And I do so mindful of all the heroic and ambitious women before me.
Harris's team says she hopes voters will be able to see themselves in her speech. She's expected to set out her vision for the nation and make a case for electing Joe Biden president. Last night, the senator watched as delegates around the country pledge their support for Biden's presidency.
And 119 votes for our next president, Joe Biden.
Fire coming down the hill, so we're leaving.
Tens of thousands of people are under evacuation orders across California as over 24 wildfires engulf the northern and central parts of the state. The most urgent of which is in the city of Vacaville, southwest of Sacramento, where residents were told to leave in the middle of the night.
I went outside in the front yard and I saw the red glow over the mountain.
With fires in 8 of the 9 Bay Area counties, its air quality is now the worst in the world. By Tuesday afternoon, California Governor Gavin Newsom declared a statewide emergency due to the extreme weather conditions.
Newly released video of a confrontation between a security guard and an NBA team president. Security and body cam videos showing the guard shoving Toronto Raptors president Masai Ujiri moments after his team had won the NBA Finals against Golden State last year. Alan Strickland previously suing, claiming he was punched. Ujiri now countersuing, saying the video clearly shows Strickland was the aggressor and his claims are, quote, baseless.
It's a milestone for any company at any time, but Apple has managed to become the first American company to pull it off this year, even after shuttering retail stores and factories during the coronavirus outbreak.
Apple has become the first American company to hit a valuation of more than $2 trillion, just 2 years after the iPhone maker reached the $1 trillion mark.
Apple shares have gained nearly 60% this year. Uber and Lyft drivers are preparing for a shutdown of service in one of the nation's biggest rideshare markets.
California's Attorney General has filed a lawsuit over the classification of Uber and Lyft drivers as independent contractors. She wants them moved into the employee category, making them eligible for unemployment benefits if they lose their jobs. That would cost the companies hundreds of millions of dollars. Both Lyft and Uber say that if their appeals of the reclassification are unsuccessful, they'll be forced to shut down in California as early as tomorrow.
Welcome back. This month, Russia became the first nation to tout a COVID-19 vaccine, but many are skeptical as they haven't followed the rigorous trial process that most nations follow. Here in the U.S., for example, even after successful trials are completed, there's another layer of approval by the FDA to make sure a vaccine is safe to use. Bob Woodruff explains in this week's Vaccine Watch.
Last week in Russia, a sudden, unexpected announcement. Officials insisting the country has developed a safe and effective coronavirus vaccine.
We expect registration of the first COVID vaccine in the world. We already are producing the vaccine. We will vaccinate some of our medical workers and teachers first. Massive vaccination in Russia will start in October.
This could be great news, but in the world of health and science, there is deep skepticism.
Were I in Russia right now, I would not roll up my sleeves and get this vaccine for the simple reason that it hasn't been adequately tested. I mean, it may be safe and it may work, but why take that chance? Why do you have to be lucky?
What has happened in Russia could never have happened here in the U.S., where approval comes only after safety and effectiveness is proven in what's commonly known as Phase 3 human trials. This can require up to 30,000 volunteers.
They've done one small Phase 1 trial of 38 people, giving them a dose of the vaccine, and that's it. The proof is in the pudding. The pudding is in a Phase 3 trial.
And even with a successful Phase 3 trial, in the U.S. and most other countries, the next stop is to prove that the vaccine is safe to the government, the FDA, and its outside expert, its Vaccine Advisory Committee.
The FDA Vaccine Advisory Panel is composed mostly of academics in the broader community. They're not FDA officials. And mostly we advise the FDA on whether we think a vaccine should be licensed or not. And in this case, I suspect we may be advising the FDA on whether we think it should be approved through emergency use authorization.
The U.S. won't outpace Russia, but the FDA says it'll do all it can to get a safe vaccine approved after reviewing final stages of human trials.
One of the things that we're doing to try to expedite the process is a rolling review. So we're looking at the data from the Phase 3, the latest clinical trials, every week.
Across the globe, 6 vaccine candidates are in Phase 3, 2 taking place in the U.S., and companies are looking for volunteers.
And we're looking at who's being enrolled. Do you have elderly volunteers? Do you have racial and ethnic minorities volunteers in the trials?
One recent volunteer, ABC News producer Gina Sinceri.
Apparently I passed the initial exam, but they really want people who go to bars, go to beaches. The fact that I work outside the home and travel, that makes me very desirable for this test.
She is now a part of Pfizer's Phase 3 trials, receiving her injection late last week.
I'm here in the waiting room. I've gotten a COVID-19 test. I've now given a lot of blood. Next up is the injection.
We don't know if Gina received the vaccine or simply a placebo, but we will be watching as Gina tracks her progress. This is Bob Woodruff, tracking the race for a vaccine.
There are now growing calls for a student loan bill of rights or some set of nationwide protections for the millions buckling under crushing debt. The higher costs of higher education is creating a stranglehold on mobility for some, and many say it's only getting worse. So tonight we wanted to take a comprehensive look at the crisis. Our Trevor Ault begins his look with what happened with one group of students and the surprise gift from a billionaire that changed their lives.
To celebrate. 396 graduating seniors at Morehouse College sat listening to commencement speaker and billionaire Robert Smith last May.
We're going to put a little fuel in your bus.
Many in the crowd didn't even know who Smith was, but he was about to change their lives.
This is my class, 2019. My family is making a grant to eliminate their student loans.
With that gesture, $34 million in student debt was wiped away, including that of Eli Kirkland.
I'm not going to lie, there was part of me that was like, man, I really don't even want to be here. But I'm not mad no more.
Eli wasn't even supposed to be there that day. Financial aid issues had kept him from graduating the year before. After getting behind on credit card payments and his parents taking out loans to help, he was ready to leave Morehouse with more than $100,000 in student loans. Instead, he left with zero.
I was just spending time with my degree.
Wait, your debt-free degree?
Debt-free degree. Coming later.
When that happened, my credit score, first of all, went up tremendously. I just have so much more freedom. I'm not handicapped to that bad credit.
Well, congrats. I wish I was in your position.
Jordan Randall, class of 2020, did not get a billionaire commencement speaker. He didn't even get a commencement. With coronavirus sending everyone home, his family put together this humble, socially distanced gathering in the backyard. And while Jordan is still grateful for what he has, debt collectors don't take gratitude as payment for his student loans.
It's definitely over 20, 30,000. But I almost feel bad saying that because I've literally said that and some students have laughed at me and I wish I had your case, which is sad. Moving in, getting my new car, trying to apply for another credit card, just doing those typical adult things have been a lot harder.
Both Eli and Jordan, fresh into the workforce, say the system of higher education needs to be re-examined. That exorbitant college costs may be putting those who want a degree in a position where they can only get ahead if they're bailed out by a billionaire.
There are a lot of people who are struggling or, who have that degree and can't find work. They're using every penny to pay off that debt.
A lot of people are stuck in so much debt that they can't even do what they studied for. So it's like, what's the point?
In the midst of the pandemic, Jordan and the millions paying student loans have some temporary relief. In March, the congressional relief package suspended federal student loan payments and collections and waived interest.
To help our students and their families, I've waived interest on all student loans held by federal government agencies.
President Trump has since extended that through the end of the year. But that relief is not going to last forever. And seeing the rapidly inflating student loan totals, currently $1.7 trillion nationwide, researchers are examining the question, is an increasingly expensive college education even worth it?
This has outpaced inflation and other growth in prices and wages for many Americans. And so it kind of gives a sense of crisis.
Lowell Ricketts is lead analyst of the St. Louis Fed Center for Household Financial Stability. And while he says, yes, college is still a worthy investment, you have to be smart about it because the payoff isn't nearly as guaranteed as it was a generation ago.
The returns relative to the generations that came before are starting to weaken when it comes to wealth.
And it's even more striking for graduates of color. According to their data, for Black Americans born as early as the 1960s, having a college or postgraduate degree was statistically insignificant to their wealth. That on average, even with all that extra schooling, they basically broke even.
It points to some of the fundamental wealth gap sources as being deeply entrenched in our history, and shows that how difficult it is for any one family or an individual to escape from some of the systemic gaps in wealth accumulation that we see based on race and ethnicity in the U.S.
The millions of Americans taking on these giant student loans are betting on themselves and the opportunities a degree can provide. And make no mistake, higher education still plays an enormous role in upward social movement for a huge percentage of Americans. But college education has certainly never cost more. Since 1998, the price of college tuition has risen 183%, more than 3 times faster than overall inflation. From 1989 to 2016, the collective balance of outstanding student loan debt for American families rose from 8.9% to 22.4%. Nearly 7 in 10 members of the class of 2019 took out some form of a student loan, graduating with an average debt of nearly $30,000. And they joined the 44 million Americans with student debt, and more than 11% of those student loans are at least 90 days delinquent or in default. For some, the dreams of a college degree can soon turn into a nightmarish burden.
When I finished college, I was still working at Starbucks. I was working at a call center, and I was also delivering mail on Saturdays. And I still couldn't afford the loans when they came in at $700 a month.
Katrina Williams found herself with more than $100,000 in student loan payments, and she couldn't get a better paying job. She says she was caught in a vicious cycle, breaking out in hives from the stress, even sometimes too broke to buy gas to go to work.
Even if I worked 3 jobs until I paid nothing but my student loan debt, sold every belonging I had, I still wouldn't be able to pay it off within the next 30 years. I can't.
Katrina moved to Japan to teach and decided she just wouldn't pay her loans. She says almost immediately the stress was lifted, but the horror she feels towards what she says is a rigged system hasn't gone away.
So when I was 18 years old and my eyes were full of stars and I'm like, I'm going away to college, I had no idea this was the future. I had no idea what all those giant numbers meant. I was a kid. People are starting to realize, oh, those millennials aren't just eating avocado toast and being lazy. They're in crippling debt. And they're like, I'm over $100,000 in debt.
No financial or legal expert would recommend defaulting on your loans and leaving the country. Nick Dukoff is the founder of EdMit, which helps students maximize their financial aid opportunities.
A college degree is still worth it. The average college graduate earns nearly $1 million more over the course of their lifetime than a comparable high school graduate without a college degree. So generally speaking, it's worth it, but the devil is always in the details.
For students looking to go to college, he says it's essential to know the financial implications ahead of time, just as you would for buying a house or a car. And if you're already in mounting debt, exhaust every available option, like income-driven repayment, to minimize the burden if you can.
Make sure you understand what options are available with respect to addressing your student debt. I'd also say that they're not alone. There's a lot of, unfortunately, other students that have an awful lot of student debt, and their communities online that they can find and meet others who have been chipping away at that debt.
Of course, for the most recent graduates, that may not sound very promising. And even Jordan, who already has a job and is working toward paying off his debts, says it's time for a major overhaul.
I think the issue with the student loan system is now it's basically combusted. There does need to be a change in our, academic system in general. And, because I do feel like it still benefits people who come from wealth, because that's who it's made. That's who it was made for.
Trevor Ault, ABC News, New York.
And when we return, what we're tracking with the convention's less than an hour away. Stay with us. And the online influencer trying to brighten up our moods during these turbulent times. Welcome back. Here's something you may not have heard just yet, but quarantine has apparently given many of us a craving for more color in our homes. Ariel Reshef speaks with an online influencer trying to help people lift their mood during these dark times.
Hi, flower friends. Okay, so I just want to talk about roses.
He's the floral design sensation blooming on Instagram. Kristen Griffith Vanderyacht's devoted following has blossomed to more than 65,000.
It's all about the blow and twist. I think our bodies are naturally reacting to being stuck in our houses all day. So we're looking to connect in any way that we can. It allows you to breathe better and experience life in a more full way because it's connecting you with the outside. But you're just bringing it inside and having something pretty to look at as well.
With all of us spending more time at home, the hashtags PlantDad and PlantMom are trending.
There's something very therapeutic and comforting about watching things grow and feeling like you were a part of that. And I think that that's fueled a lot of this for people. Even if you're just digging in a pot on your balcony, there's something very satisfying and hopeful about that.
To make your home garden grow, we went to the expert for advice.
I have a question regarding my tomato plants. I seem to find black caterpillars on them that seem to appear overnight.
That is a great question, Kathy. The number one thing that I like to do is you have to use an organic pesticide. There's something called neem oil, which comes from the tree. It comes from the seeds of the neem tree, which I believe is native to Southeast Asia. And that oil acts as a natural pesticide, and it tastes awful. It has this really disgusting, bitter taste that pests and bugs really dislike.
I want to know, how can I create a flower arrangement with only using dark colors like black or maybe a deep purple?
I say embrace the mood. There's nothing depressing about dark flowers. And that is a really great way to bring in something sort of dark and a little bit sexy into your space.
But what if you're like me and want home florals without the fuss?
I tend to kill every flower in my house, so this is extremely helpful for me.
Kristen says a succulent is always a safe choice.
If you have a murder thumb, it's perfect for that.
That would be me.
Our thanks to Ariel for that. And we are just moments away from the start of night 3 of the Democratic National Convention. Of course, we'll continue our complete coverage with our powerhouse political team right here on ABC News Live. But for a preview of what we can expect for tonight, let's bring in ABC News Deputy Political Director Mary Alice Parks. Mary Alice, the whole night will have a huge focus on female speakers. Give us some of the highlights.
Well, obviously, Senator Kamala Harris front and center tonight. The first time we will hear from Joe Biden's historic pick. But she's not the only trailblazing female Democrat that's going to be highlighted tonight. There's a lot of firsts. The first female Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. The first Latina Democratic governor, Lujan Grisham. Elizabeth Warren speaking tonight. She's obviously a powerful female voice in the Democratic Party. And Hillary Clinton, the Democratic female nominee last time. All of these history-making women. Because, look, big picture, Democrats have always known that women are the backbone of their party. And in the era of Trump, it's more than that. They're the guts, brains, the entire operation of the Democratic Party. And it's very clear that Democrats want to remind voters that they're the ones with a huge edge with women.
The guts, the brains, the backbone, all of that. And of course, Kamala Harris has her big moment tonight. What are you expecting in her remarks?
Well, look, she basically has to do two things. She needs to reintroduce herself on this national stage. She's no longer Joe Biden's competitor. She now needs to show that she's his teammate and that they're working together. But there's also a lot of pressure for her to start to show what a Biden-Harris administration would even look like. You know, the last few days we've seen these glowing speeches about Joe Biden, but they've really been about his character. You know, people like Michelle Obama saying that he can be trusted, but they're not exactly speeches about big change. That's partly the benefit of running against a sitting president. Democrats can partly say that, look, changing administrations would be change enough. But the Biden team says they know that that's not really enough. They need to start laying out the case to voters about what exactly an administration would look like. So we're expecting some pretty big policy speeches tonight, and Harris is going to take the charge on that. She's going to talk about things like environmental change, immigration reform, gun control, issues that Joe Biden really wants to lead on.
And of course, we cannot forget President Obama is also speaking tonight. What do you have your eye on there?
Yeah, it's remarkable. We were just talking about all these powerhouse women, but it is really possible that Barack Obama, the former president, really steals the show in the end. You know, he's not just going to be talking as Joe Biden's former boss. He's talking as a former president, and the campaign just put out some excerpts of his prepared remarks, and I tell you, they're stunning. It is really something. He is holding absolutely nothing back. It's really rare for a former president to go directly after a sitting president, but it seems like that's exactly what Barack Obama plans to do. He doesn't normally call out Donald Trump by name, but in these prepared remarks, he really does. I mean, he says that Donald Trump has shown no interest in putting in the work, finding common ground, using the awesome power of his office to help anyone but himself and his friends. Just pretty remarkable language. Taken all together, these excerpts I'm looking at, it looks like President Obama plans to say that he really believes President Trump is a threat to democratic institutions. And that's quite the claim.
People will be all ears tonight for sure. Mary Alice, thanks so much.
Thanks, Lindsay.
And before we go tonight, our image of the day. A worker getting the stage ready in Wilmington, Delaware, where Senator Kamala Harris is set to deliver her socially distanced speech tonight. While much of the fanfare of past conventions is gone, history will nonetheless be made. And that is our show for tonight. I'm about to switch sets and be joined by Tom Yamas and our powerhouse political team. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live as we begin night 3 of coverage for the Democratic National Convention. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us, and good night.